authentic people. Welcome to the Authentic BA podcast. I'm Bumi Falari. Thank you so much for joining me today. If today is your first time watching an Authentic BA podcast, you are so very welcome. Make sure you smash the subscribe button and you press the notification bell so you get a notification anytime we post our wonderful and useful videos. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at stakeholder management. Stakeholder management is the process of identifying, analyzing, engaging, and communicating with individuals or groups of people or even organizations that have an interest or that have a stake in the outcome or the success of a project or a program or an initiative or something that you're about to deliver. So today we're going to also look at the components of stakeholder management. So the first thing you ought to do in stakeholder management is identification. We want to make sure that we've identified our stakeholders. So this process involves finding out who are all the potential stakeholders who may be affected. So not the people who can affect your project, but those that may be affected by or can influence your project. So stakeholders can include individual people in an organization. It could be groups of people, teams. It could even be other organizations or even communities can influence or impact or be affected by your project. So anyone that has a vested interest in your project's outcome should be considered as a stakeholder. And it could be your project sponsors as well, for example, or your customers even, end users, employees, government agencies, regulatory bodies. It could be suppliers, the general public. The list goes on and on. So make sure when you are trying to identify your stakeholders, cast your net very, very wide. Okay, next component is analysis. Once stakeholders are identified, it's important that you analyze them and analyze their interests, their needs, their expectations, the potential impact on your project. And what this analysis does is it helps you to prioritize stakeholders based on their level of influence, their power, and importance to the success of your project. So you can use techniques like stakeholder mapping or power interest grid. So this is where you plot your stakeholders according to their level of power and interest, and then you can emerge with those who have the most power and most influence, and those are the ones that you are going to want to focus your efforts on. The next component is engagement. Once you have identified and you have analyzed your stakeholders, you've found out which ones are the key stakeholders, the most important ones, you need to start to engage. And it doesn't mean that you don't engage with the stakeholders that fall low on your priority. You engage with them all, but the levels of engagement differs. So stakeholder engagement basically means actively involving stakeholders throughout the project life cycle. So this may include consulting them on project decisions, for example, seeking their input, their feedback. You want to keep them informed of what's going on the project's progress, the developments. You want to make sure that they're fully aware and fully abreast of how your project is progressing. Effective engagement strategies should be tailored to the specific needs and preferences of each stakeholder group. So when you are doing your analysis, you need to put your stakeholders in groups as well. So, you might have a group where you need to manage them actively, which means you're constantly engaging with them. Some of them will need to just be kept informed. So at regular intervals or maybe at milestones on your project, you are informing them about how the project is progressing. So make sure that you group your stakeholders accordingly and engage with them accordingly as well. So the next component of stakeholder management is communication. You want to make sure that communication is clear and transparent, because this is essential for successful stakeholder management. Project teams need to establish effective communication channels to disseminate information. So, making sure that you're informing at the correct levels, and you're informing people in a way that is clear and is targeted to the audience. You want to make sure that as you're communicating, you're addressing stakeholder concerns, you're managing their expectations, and you're giving them regular updates. Maybe you might want to meet with them at regular intervals as well. You're producing reports at regular intervals that keeps them informed and keeps them clear about what the project is doing, where it's going, and what is happening, like the challenges or the achievements as well of the project. Other communication tools should be used to keep stakeholders engaged, but these are the most important ones. So just make sure that they're informed and that they're kept engaged and abreast of what's happening on your project. Next component is relationship building. This is so important. Building positive relationships with stakeholders is so crucial to gaining their trust. And trust is important if you're going to be supported by your stakeholders. If you're going to earn their cooperation, you need to build that trust. Project teams need to establish some sort of rapport. You need to demonstrate empathy. I have an example of a project I was working on, and you see this typically around technical teams, where perhaps a stakeholder has raised a concern. They want something to be done in some sort of way. Obviously, the technology teams or the technical people have a good understanding of what is technically possible and what isn't. Sometimes I hear things like, we can't do it that way, or why do they want to do it that way? This is the best way, this is this and that. We have to engage with them from a place of empathy, first understanding where they're coming from. If you as the subject matter expert, or you as the technology expert, believes that the solution you're proposing is the best way forward, ultimately help them to understand it. Help them to understand it with empathy. So listen to them actively so that you understand where the concern is coming from, and you address the concern rather than push back on the concern that they're raising. Project teams can enhance stakeholder engagement this way, and the likelihood of the project succeeding can be hinged on how much you're able to build that relationship with your stakeholders. The next component of stakeholder management is mitigation of conflicts. Conflicts and disagreements are so common in project environments. It's so common among stakeholders. So when you are creating your stakeholder management frameworks, make sure that you have a framework able to effectively manage conflicts. So a management strategy that is able to identify potential conflicts early on, or at least you're able to respond very quickly. You need to make sure that you constructively address conflicts. Maybe what you want to think about doing is trying to facilitate dialogue, for example, or negotiating compromises. Stakeholders are coming from different angles and different perspectives, and the project needs to deliver something. You can easily be pulled in different directions. So a good stakeholder management framework is able to facilitate dialogue, negotiate compromises, and find win-win solutions that satisfies the interest of all parties involved. Next component is continuous monitoring and adaptation. So stakeholder management is an ongoing process. You don't engage your stakeholders at the beginning of the project to say, yeah, we're going to do this project, we're going to deliver in 6 months, 12 months, and you go away into some sort of hideout working on your project, only to come back 6 months or 12 months later to say this is what we're going to deliver or what we've delivered, it's not going to work. You've got to continuously monitor and adapt. So you've got to continuously and regularly assess your stakeholder dynamics. For example, you might be on a project, you have a bunch of stakeholders who are part of your project. That stakeholder gets reassigned to a different role in the company, no longer interested in your project. What do? If you've gone away and you're not constantly engaging or continuously monitoring, you're not going to be aware of that change, and you're not going to be able to respond. So you must be able to regularly assess your stakeholder dynamics, reassess the stakeholder priorities, and adjust your engagement strategies accordingly. And by staying responsive, what you're doing is that the needs and the concerns of your real stakeholders are constantly on the fore, and your project teams can maintain stakeholder satisfaction throughout the project life cycle, which is quite crucial to ensuring that your project is successful. Finally, in summary, just to summarize, stakeholder management is a multifaceted process. So it involves identifying, analyzing, engaging, and communicating with stakeholders to ensure that their interests are being understood, that their concerns and their needs are being addressed, and that you have secured the support that you need to make your project successful. So go forth and engage and manage your stakeholders if you want your project to be successful. I hope you found this useful. I'd like to hear from you, those of you who have stakeholder management frameworks in place. How is that working out? Is there something else that you think is a key ingredient of successfully managing stakeholders? Please share that in the comment section. I'd really love to hear from you, and I'm sure the community can benefit from your expertise. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.